Well, hello, shiny, crafty people, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Totten, and you might be wondering why I'm wearing this fantastic Star Trek The Next Generation uniform. It's because today I'm going to teach you how to make these cool Star Trek The Next Generation masks in a variety of colors. So it looks a lot like the uniform that I am wearing because, as you may have guessed, I'm an enormous geek. I love Star Trek. I grew up on it. So let's go down to the cutting table now, and I'll show you what you need to do to get started. So to make this mask, we're going to need some cutting implements. I like a rotary cutter and, of course, a pair of scissors. I'll need some pins or maybe some of these cute little clips that people use. You're going to need your fabrics. And in Star Trek The Next Generation, the main colors are burgundy for command, blue for, several different shades of blue, by the way. There's like 5 or 6 different ones used on the show. Blue for science and medical, and then this gold yellow color for engineering and security. Now this is not the exact right color. You need something a little more gold, but unfortunately they were sort of out of the color that I really needed. It's more of a mustard color. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one as the example. But if you're making for a die-hard Star Trek fan, you might want to get a little closer to it. You will need some elastic, and I have both black and white elastic and these cool little toggles that can go on. And maybe you want to add in a nose piece, and I have these wire ones that you can use that are glue-on, or you can just put a piece of wire in there. Now you will need also some iron-on DIY t-shirt transfer material, and this is actually for dark colors. So you have to make sure it says that it's for dark fabrics, like it says right up here on the thing. So make sure you actually connect into that. And of course, I've printed out a sheet of those, and I'll have a link for this in several different sizes. I have 3 different sizes: medium, large, and then smaller for like kids. This would be for standard adult, and if you're doing something else. So I've already cut one out, and I'll show you how to do that later. And you're also going to need probably just a regular grid, but also you need your template. So this is what the template actually looks like with the little 1-inch pieces added. This is very similar to the 3D mask design. This is actually the same exact mask that we created in another video, so you should watch that video if you want the specific step-by-steps of how to make this template. Or you can use a template that my company makes. Artisan Laser Guild makes this template for us, and it does exactly here, except you will need to add the 1-inch sides because it's really not easy to get a rotary cutter to turn those corners. All right, so I'm going to show you using the template. And I think I'll make, because I'm in charge of this here channel, I think I will make a command one of these. Oh, and I didn't mention you will need maybe some matching threads to help, because you don't necessarily want to do a black thread on top of it. In fact, this is one of the sample ones I did to start out, and you'll see this black stitching, and I'm not really a big fan of that because it shows up. But if I had used a burgundy thread, it wouldn't have been so noticeable. All right, so let's get started. We're going to need 2 layers of the black fabric, and those are going to create the little flip over sizes here. And you're going to need 2 layers of the burgundy. One will have the extra tails on it, like this. And I'm going to create another black layer that'll be for a filter pocket. So I want to teach you how to make a filter pocket in this version. All right, so I know I need 2 of the burgundy, but 1 has to have that thing, but I need 3 of this black one. So I've already gone ahead and ironed all of this fabric out, and I will double it over so I can get 2 pieces out. So let's do that way. I've doubled it here, and I'm going to make them both this exact size. Now here's the thing I want you to notice on this one. This is actually the smaller size. It's using the line that says use this line for smaller mask. However, I really would like to I made this for my face, and because if you're making it for a larger face, you don't want to do the full size because you want enough of the black to pop out, to really show off the way the uniform looks. Remember the uniform I was wearing at the beginning? So you want that black to really become a lot of the mask. So I'm going to use the smaller, skinnier part for my face, but I'm still going to use the full size of these flaps. You'll see how they don't touch in the middle, they actually overlap one another. So I'm going to make the full size of those. And I'm going to cut this out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out 2 full sizes, and then one of them will be the smaller size because it's going to be the filter pocket. I hope that makes sense. Now, you always want to be careful. If you're new to using a rotary cutter, please watch the video on my channel about rotary cutter safety, or watch some video somewhere, because you really need, or, you know, read up on it. You really need to be very careful. In fact, if you're new at this, I would strongly suggest you get a metal glove. They're like a glove for like cutting with knives and whatever else, and you should wear it on your non-cutting hand. So I have 2 of those. We'll put those over at the ironing board because we're going to use those in a little bit. And then I'm going to do one the smaller size for the lining, or the pocket that we're going to use for our, what's the right word? For any filter. All right, so I know I'm going to try to get as much out of this fabric. So I'm going to come all the way over here and chop that out. And you'll notice that I am trying not to come back toward myself. Again, rotary cutters, you should always be, it's not a pizza wheel, you should always be going in one direction, preferably away from yourself. So I'm going to turn it around, and now what I'm going to do is use that line on the template and line it up along that edge that I've already cut properly. So now I can cut these last 2 edges. One straight motion, I'm not pizza cutting it, just one motion. And if you're having a problem, if your blade's not strong enough, change your blade out. They're expensive, but they will last quite a while, as long as you don't use them on anything other than fabric. All right, so now I have 2 linings, 2 of the flap out pieces, and I have one to make a filter pocket. So I'm going to move this, this one that's going to have the filter pocket, I'm actually going to take 1 inch off of each side, and that's because I need it to be small enough for a filter to go through. So I'm going to use my, I've got to basically give myself an opening on either end. So I'm going to use my grid here. And of course you could just draw this on with a piece of chalk. You could have just used scissors for all of this, and it would have worked just as well, and you could use a pair of scissors. So don't worry, you know, you don't have to use a rotary cutter, but if you do like doing it this way, that's what we do, take 1 inch off. So now this is our filter pocket that's going to go on. And I'm going to also take that over to the ironing board because I'm going to add something to it. And then the last thing I need to do is to cut out 2 pieces of my command fabric. And I will be very carefully cut this. I'm going to cut them the smaller size, remember? So actually I'm going to bring this down that point to almost there, because I know I'm only going to use that much. Remember I said I'm going to do the smaller sizes for my face. Even though my face is pretty big, it's going to really open up that black at the top and the bottom. Okay, now I've got that part done. And in fact, I didn't quite cut it perfectly there. Flip it around here. Now, I started watching Star Trek The Next Generation with my dad when it came out in like 1987 or 88, and I was 12 or 13 at the time. And it was a big deal. It was our TV show that we watched together. Like, basically, it was our thing. And it came on Saturday nights. It was syndicated, so it was like whenever it was on in your area. Well, in Central Florida, it was on Saturday nights. And my mother always got upset because it was on late at night, but we needed to go to church the next day, and she would get really annoyed that my dad hadn't properly considered that we would need to go to church. And so we would still stay up, though. It was on at I think 9 o'clock at night, so my mother would be like, it's too late for the kids, they need to go to bed. But Dad and I definitely bonded over that, so he'd say, oh, it's all right, the kids will be fine in the morning. Turns out we never were. We were always very tired, my brother and I, when he watched it with me, and then my dad and I watched it together. All right, so I've done now that shape. Now, the reason I'm doing it with with the template is I'm going to cut this out separately later. But you could, of course, do this with I could have just used the fabric one that I had added 1 inch onto each side of the pieces to do, but I'm not going to do that way because I want to show you how you can do it without, if you're just using the grid. So now I need to add 1 inch to each of these, and I'm just going to do that with my template, my grid here. So I've made a mark at each of those corners to show me what's the right direction. So I can put this on that mark. 1 inch going between them and just add that to it. I'll just go over at the end here and then bring the line back across. This is really explained a lot better in the video I made about the 3D mask, so you should check that out for a lot more detail here. So yeah, actually, I'm a huge fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's my Star Trek. You know, my grandfather was an enormous fan of the original TV show, but that's because that's when he was a kid. So for me, Star Trek: The Next Generation was my thing. I, in fact, learned to sew because I wanted a Star Trek costume. So I went to my grandmother's house. One of them. I have 2 grandmothers, and I've told you in another video. They lived not only in the same city, and not only in the same subdivision, and not only on the same street, but they lived in virtually identical houses right next door to each other. And so I had a choice. I had these 2 amazing grandmothers. The ones, one is a plump Protestant hymn-singing, teetotaling grandmother, and whose house was always, you know, smelled of cookies and sounded like grandma singing, you know, her hymns. Or the one next door was my skinny Catholic chain-smoking grandmother, who always had either a John Wayne movie or a Star Trek episode on her TV screen. And I went to the 2 of them, and I said, I actually went to the skinny Catholic chain-smoking grandmother's house because, of course, I knew that she would be understanding. Her husband was a big Star Trek fan, so he would certainly understand that I wanted a Star Trek costume. And I asked her, I said, Grandma, there's a convention coming up here in Orlando, and they have a costume contest. Wouldn't it be great if you made me a costume and I could wear it, and then we would win, you and I, right? We would win the costume contest. And she looked at me for just a moment. And then she kind of twisted her head and said, you know what? If I make it for you, you won't learn anything. So how about I teach you how to make it and you'll learn how to sew? Now that's not what you tell a 15 or 16-year-old boy, you know, who's trying to navigate the world. Maybe we should teach you how to sew. And I was like, okay, Grandma, I appreciate that. You know what? I remember I have to go see my other grandmother. So I went out the door of her house and walked across the well-worn path because we had cut a path in their 2 front lawns. And I passed my grandfather, who was listening to a religious program on his car radio while he changed the oil in his truck. We laughed for a second. Then I went inside to smell, you know, amazing food cooking and probably the sound of music on the television as Grandma was watching that and singing along, I am 16 going on 17. And I said to her, Grandma, I have a great opportunity. I want you to help me. And she looked at me and said, oh, honey, we're not going to make it for you. We're going to teach you how to make it. And that's when I noticed that she had a phone in her hand. You see, while I was walking across that short distance across the lawn, that devious, skinny Catholic chain-smoking grandmother had called my pleasantly plump Protestant teetotaling grandmother and told her about my plan. They were on to me, and I had to learn how to sew. So I'm kind of going to bring that full circle, because even though I wanted a Star Trek costume then, I now have made 12 or 15 of them, and I'm showing you how to make these masks. Let's go over to the ironing board and see what you need to do next. All right, so we have 2 pieces for both our chin and our nose. We have our pocket for the filter. We have the outer fabric with those tails that are going to flip back, and the inner fabric. So I'm just going to set these 2 burgundy ones aside because we don't need those. We are going to need to fold these in half to create our chin and nose flaps, I like to call them. So I'm going to fold these in half and basically point to point. I folded those points together and give it a good steam. You know I love steam. Same thing here. I'm going to fold this in half. It's a little hard to see on black how they fold in half to each other, but it's folded in half. It doesn't have to be super exact. It's one of the better parts. Okay, and then the last thing I need to do is I need to fold in about 1/4 of an inch or maybe more, maybe 3/8 of an inch on each side of this. And I just did something really fun, actually. Because I put so much steam here, when I lay this down, because the other things were there, when I lay it down, it actually kind of holds the fabric in place. And that steam continues to pop back up through. So it's nice and toasty and warm. If you're doing this on a cold day, great. Right, look at that. So the next thing I'm going to do is stitch down each of these two sides. So those are in place. Now this is the point that if you wanted a nose wire in your piece, you should go ahead and open this up, put in a piece of wire, close it, and then stitch it down. This would be the place to do that. You could also take one of those bendable nose wires and place it in as well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, because it's going to be immovable, it's never going to come back out, I'm just going to go ahead and glue it in. I would either put it on the inside or you put it on the outside, but I think I'll put it on the inside. I'm going to open that up. You're getting the full deluxe version today. Like everything I could do to this one, I'm doing to it. So I'm going to peel off the part at the end. You can buy these online. They're just a real thin piece of like aluminum or something. And they're really nice, actually, surprisingly good. I'm going to go right up into that fold at the top. And you could measure this to make sure you put it at the center. I'm really actually not that worried about it. And now that we've got our pieces made, I'm going to come over to the sewing machine and we're going to put this part together. So we're going to need to layer this mask up to put all the parts together. But the first thing I want to do is go ahead and stitch the two sides of the filter pocket down. So I'm going to come over here to my machine and just run a 1/4 inch seam. Real simple. 1/4 inch seam down each side. And perfect, that's been stitched on. Now I used a matching thread so you're not going to really see what I did. And then it's time to layer this. So the way we're going to layer this is we're going to start with the outside layer. And you'll notice here on the sample, the outside layer comes in and rolls over, and that's why we have those extra 1-inch pieces on the side. The next thing I'm going to do is layer these two folded pieces on, and I'm going to match up the points down here at the bottom, matching those up. And we're really just layering this whole thing up. And I'm putting this one in as well. Now I might want to see which way that bendy piece is, because I would want that to, I want the inside of the bendy piece here, if that makes sense, because this is the part that's going to come out and fold over my nose. And if it was just a regular wire, it wouldn't be a problem, but I put in that one that sort of has an inside and an outside. So I've layered those now. Then what I have to do is layer in the filter pocket, and the filter pocket needs to go right side down, because what I want to do is make sure that these raw edges that are folded in here are going to go against this top fabric. So I've done that, because basically this top layer and this filter pocket are going to roll together inside, and this is what it'll look like on the inside. You'll have this burgundy with this black pocket. So basically it'll look like this, the inside will look like this when it's done. So I've layered all those up. Yes, everything lines up. So now that we've created that sandwich, it's time to pin or clip it together. Now, I could use my pins, right? But some people have asked me to show them how to use the clips, and I actually think the clips are kind of fun. It's easier also, you can't sew over a clip, so it's probably better for me, because I tend to sew over pins. I've been doing that for a very long time. It's not that good for you or your machine, so I probably should stop doing it. So this is going to help me make sure I can't. I'm just going to pin this all along, because we're going to sew down these two sides. And you're going to notice that it's not exact. Like, I'm not getting, everything's not lined up perfectly, and I have to say, I'm not bothered by it, because I'm going to use a good, little more than a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or what they call maybe a thicker 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that will help me put it all together. All right, let's go to the machine, and I will start. Now, I'm not using the matching thread here. I'm using the black because I want to be able to see it. Since I'm sewing from a straight edge onto this point, I go to where it's going to kind of have to turn with my needle down, and then I can turn the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of squeeze the fabric several times. There we go. Now the biggest, most important part of this one is that point. I just want to make sure I get right to that point and then turn it. Now I don't know if you've been watching my channel for any period of time or watching my other videos. You'll know from this 3D mask video that I got the inspiration for these designs from Marcy Harrell. I hope I'm saying her name right because there's an extra I in her name. And she and her husband have a channel where they sew all kinds of great things, and they are fantastic. You should check them out. She has a new gator bandana mask that she's created out of t-shirts, and it's so good. And I will say half of the success of their channel, 50% is her skill, right? 25% is their humor and just the humanity of them, and another 25% is the girl's hair. Holy cow, her hair is fantastic. So I've created that sandwich, right? Here we go, created the sandwich. And then I need to turn this inside out, which is why I've actually stitched off the ends here, is because it holds that in. I'm not gonna rip it apart, but also because I'm gonna use those later to fold in. Now, you have a very small thing you're turning here, and you got a bunch of layers, so just take your time turning it inside out. Imagine that, you know, sometimes people are in labor for hours and hours and more than a day to give birth to the children. You can take a good 3 or 4 minutes and carefully turn this inside out to birth your amazing Star Trek The Next Generation mask. And I'm just very slowly going in and pulling this out. Now, I've used just regular quilting cottons. In fact, you'll see that I used a fat quarter. All of these were fat quarters, actually, from the store. It's easy to find solid color fat quarters. And so it was also easier than going and saying, you know, I need 1/8 of a yard of burgundy fabric. It's kind of crazy. And these are like less than $2. So depending upon where you live in the country or which store you're at. So as I'm birthing this through, you'll notice that those pieces come out. Isn't that cool? And in fact, that nose piece, there's a nose piece in there and it's not happy. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to fix that to make it better. Let's pretend that we actually, had actually sewn that. It was just a regular wire, and I'm just going to sew it in. All right, so this is what we're going to kind of look like. If you're a big fan of Star Trek The Next Generation, you might remember an episode that had like this alien space baby that attached to the ship, and I think it looks like that, or maybe a trill. Okay, so that's for all of my other Star Trek geeks. I'm going to go here real quick and just stitch along the edge of that wire to keep it in. I'm just going to stitch off, and that's going to hold it in there. And I probably should trim all the little threads. That was just annoying me. I didn't want it to go anywhere, so. All right, back to what we're doing. So, now I've created that funky shape, and you'll notice on the inside is where we have room for a filter pocket that you can put a filter in there. And it would be a very skinny filter, obviously, but you know, you still have the ability for it to do that. So I'm gonna take this over to my iron and kind of iron all these pieces out to get this just nice and flat. Now it's not gonna flatten completely out, but this part will flatten, this part will flatten, and then this part will flatten as well. So I'm gonna take this item here and just give myself a good iron with that. And actually, you could just go ahead and fold it in, because it's gonna have to fold it in a minute anyway. So just go ahead and fold it in there. See what it does on the other side. I'm gonna go ahead and fold that in. Now you may notice from my other video that if you watch the other 3D mask video that I did trim the edge, I trimmed these points inside, but it turns out it's not really that important. And also, I don't really want this one to be a super pointy one. I kind of want a more gentle curve because it's going to make more sense for the Star Trek part of the mask. Now also here where I put those stitching lines in, you can't see that on there, let me do it this way. Here where I put those stitching lines in, it's going to naturally want to fold in, and I want to go ahead and iron those pieces folded over at the stitching line. It's going to be super easy. Made that a lot easier. Ooh, it's hot. Oh, nice. So I'll just iron that, make sure we look at how good that looks. All right, next step is going to be, well, I want to tuck this in a little bit so it looks a little, okay, good. Our next step is going to be to go ahead and fold over these edges on the end. So what I'm going to do is zoom you in a little bit so you get a little better view of how I do that. And I am going to fold to this line right here, see? Bam, fold it down. And give that a quick iron. Nice. And then I'll fold it over uno más, one more time. Ah, so good. Do the same thing on the other side. Fold in half to that line where they go together. We also made what I call a smile mask, which is a clear mask design, and showed how to do that with this exact same pattern as well. So those are all folded in. That's what's going to entrap our elastic, and we are moving along. Now you might want to clear some of these threads. You might want to clear some of these threads before you go. You know, I didn't do that yet. And usually I use tinier scissors. These are way too big for this process. You know, it's, I had a friend of mine who tried to tell me that, oh, well, you only need one pair of scissors. You can do everything with one pair of scissors. I gotta tell you, there are projects that really do need special items. And considering that you'll probably use them for a very long time, I like to invest. And so actually I have, it's why our company has 30 plus sewing machines and sergers, and why I have every kind of scissor you can need. And of course I don't have them right here. All right, let's take this back over. Let's go ahead and get this back over to the machine. And I'm gonna cut some elastic for it. Now I like longer elastic. I'm gonna cut these at 7 inches for my head, but of course you could do smaller if you wanted. It really wouldn't hurt for you to do other sizes. You really should just check, see what works the best for you. And because I like to use I like to make them adjustable. So I'm always going to use these toggles. And because of that, I don't really need it to be over the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little loop for these. The way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to, actually, I'm going to tuck them in here to this shape. And I will clip those on. So let's show you what that looks like. I am going to, I got all this stuff in the way. I'm going to go ahead and clip these on like this. Oh, nice. This is a jersey style elastic that I really like. And you can find that on Amazon. In fact, I have a link in the description below, so you can check it out. And yeah, check it out and see if you like it. I like it because it's super soft and straight. Like this other elastic, this is some really thick, I think this is 3/4 inch elastic that is the only thing I had at the time when I was making that particular mask. And I went, I'll just use it. It's super uncomfortable. I mean, this is just, and plus it's not real stretchy. So when I put it on my face, it kind of like pulls my ears and I look like a Ferengi, which is not a good look for me. All right, so I'm going to take this over to the machine, but first I need to change out my thread. So let's go over there and I'll show you what that's going to look like. So because of the way I'm doing this, I'm going to use some matching thread. See, this is be a bit of a matching thread in the top thread, but I don't really want that matching thread covering on the black on the bottom. So I'm going to leave my black bobbin in the bottom. So the bobbin can stay. Don't know why I took that off. I will take off the black thread from the top, put on this burgundy thread that will match. Now, I've gotten super good at threading my machine. It's amazing. When my grandmother sat me down and taught me how to sew, I thought, oh, I'm going to do this like girly thing. And then I realized as I sat down to this machine and saw how intricate it was and how hard it was to thread and how sharp the needle was and everything else, I realized after the first 5 minutes that I was working on a power tool for fabric. And it was like, holy cow, this is like a serious thing. This is not just some dainty little girl thing. This is something really dangerous. In fact, I've put the needle through my finger so many times, I can't even tell you. It's crazy. So I have hurt myself with the sewing machine in ways that I really shouldn't brag about. So I'm going to start sort of near the edge here, and I'm actually going to, I want you to see here that I'm going to, I am actually going to use the edge, inside edge of the presser foot. So not out here, but in here as my line to get a really thin top stitching line. If I use the outside, the line would be way in here, and that would be too far inside. I want it to be right on the edge. I'm going to keep that fabric basically going right into a point here. All right, so I'm going to start off of that so I don't have to try to hold that in place. Give it a little bit of a stitch back. And if I'm doing this right, I should mostly get that fabric. It's not too bad. You might check your tension on your machine to make sure you're not pulling too much of the bobbin thread through the top. And so you need to lower your tension on your actual top thread. Typically that's some type of a control here on the front of the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and take this clip off, but when I do that I need to recognize that I'm going to have to hold this point in. Little back stitch there. Alright, and you're going to see how much you're really seeing there. That's kind of bothering me. I'm going to really back off this amount of pressure just to see if I can maybe make it better. Slightly better. I just need to be a little more careful that I get a nice straight line. You'll notice I've stopped talking, and that's because I feel like I need to concentrate. So I'm concentrating right now. Peeling the other end off of there, and I'm going to very carefully go give a little bit of back stitch just to make sure. And I'll get ready for this one as well. Now I am going to come back in and do one more stitch because I need to. I need to stitch down these along the back, but I don't really want to try to. I don't want to go through the other direction because I don't want to flip it over and have black thread now on the front, even though I kind of have a darker thread there. So I'm just going to mark where those are. And the way I'm going to do that with this right now, I would use a pin or I can use a clip. So I'm going to put a clip here at the edge. See how it's right along the edge there? And one at the bottom, so I know where those are going to go. And then I can put this back into the machine, and I know that I need to stay on the side of the clip. So let me move the clip over just a little bit there. Now I know I can stitch these down. I'll come down, take that clip off, and just go straight down. And when I take it out, it will have crossed over that. See how good that is? Now if I did it with a pin, this is what I would do. I would come in here and put a pin right where that point is on both sides. And now I know I need to sew inside of that. So I need to go to the other side of that. I can't go right at the pin, I've got to go just inside. Now, I have a feeling that one got a little close, but it's on there. It worked. So I can take off the clips and everything. So now I've got my actual mask made here, right? And you'll notice on the inside there is that filter pocket going right down in through there on either side. Now I might make that a little smaller in the future. If I was worried about that, I might make it a little bit, still squeeze it in a little more so it's got a little more space. But in reality, we now have 3 layers of fabric in here, which is what the CDC is recommending, so I'm not so worried about it. I'm going to go find the middle portion here and just go ahead and bend my nose piece in place. And let me go ahead and try this on and see how it looks. I always have to feel and see where the elastic is so I get it right. Well, I think it looks like a Star Trek mask so far. It's got the black at the top and the bottom. It's got the nice big color of the command. And now I have to add on my little cutout piece, which I can't find. So that's okay. I'm going to cut out another one out of this sheet that I told you. Now, I bought this at Walmart, and it's the Avery Labels, and it comes with 5 sheets in here, so 5 of these sheets, and it depends on pricing. And actually, here's a little piece that I did. So I want to show you how to cut these apart. I've printed it on what is considered an inkjet printer, and so here you go. Let me show you the paper that I did. I'm going to need to cut out with not my fabric scissors, by the way. With a pair of, these are my kitchen scissors actually. I'm going to cut out one of these little pieces. Now I'm going to cut all of that much right there. And I want you to see that you've got to get the paper off the back. Now, if you wait until it's tiny, until it's that little size piece, but now I've lost it again. Well, either way, if you, oh, it's right here. If you wait until you cut this whole thing apart, and then you try to go to the back and peel all that paper off, you'd have a really hard time. In fact, it would be really difficult to do. So what I did with this one ahead of time was I went ahead and peeled back part of it and cut the paper off. So here's how you get this paper to move. You have to actually sort of rip it. You have to kind of rip, but it only rips the back. You see that top fabric actually, top material didn't actually rip. See in there? But it did rip on the back. So you kind of halfway rip it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pull off enough to where I can see the fabric, the material on the other side, right? So now when I cut this out, I can very carefully cut all of the white off. So I'm going to go in. Now, here's the thing. This is a communicator. It's what's going to tell everybody it's Star Trek, basically, right? On the area where you don't have any paper, you have to be real careful because this is quite flimsy stuff. Then once you get to the paper, it cuts a little easier. This is a Star Trek communicator badge. And it is what tells people it's the next generation. It's got these tiny little points you have to be really careful of. You could, of course, if you wanted to, don't worry about printing one of these things out or getting that transfer material, although I think you'll find about 50 other projects you can use that transfer material on, if you choose to do it. If you don't want to print one of these out, you can, of course, use some fabric paints and sort of, paint your own on. You can find a bunch of different designs. Now, if you're not a Star Trek person, but you're making this for a Star Trek person, we're not selling anything. That would be intellectual property of Paramount and CBS and Viacom. We're not doing that. If you were making this for somebody, and they're a big Star Trek fan, just realize that there are different designs of communicators. And on the outfit that I'm showing you this for, the design that's meant to be like from The Next Generation, the TV show, this is the communicator. You need the circular thing. You don't want the square one. You don't want the one that's just this Delta shield without the circle. This is the one for The Next Generation that was on TV with Patrick Stewart and all of them for 7 seasons in the 80s up into the early 90s. And then they changed it over for a later series. Right, we have that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, I got to take the mask off, and we'll go over to the iron, and I'll show you how this gets ironed together. All right, so we get our mask, and we got to figure out which side is going to be the top. Now that's where I have this is where I have my nose wire, so that's going to be the nose. And just so you're aware, Star Trek, they always wear the communicator on the their left side, which looking at it would be the right side. So we're going to put that on the right side. And I like to put it about halfway, a little more closer to halfway than the middle here. And, I kind of look at it. It's got about a ½ inch at the top and the bottom underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and peel it off of the paper right where I did that. Ooh. And in fact, this particular piece already had part of it peeled off. And we're going to follow the instructions according to the design, or the actual package. And what they say to do, at least what I'm reading, is to use a piece of the paper they give you with it, place that over the top. We're going to use an iron, and we're going to press this for a period of time. And it actually walks you through all the instructions. There's a sheet in here that has the instructions. Whew. See that sheet? So we're looking at the instructions here. Tells you what to do. Trim and peel. Prep the workspace. Iron. Apply firm pressure slowly from left to right. And they tell you even a quarter sheet takes about 40 seconds. We're not even doing a quarter sheet here. I'm going to give it some nice firm pressure. And you can just not use steam. Actually, you probably shouldn't. And then I'm going to give it a little bit more because I love it. And then peel that off, and bam! It's been ironed down beautifully. Look at that. And just like that, I'm in my command uniform. Now, one of the things you could do differently, if you wanted to really add some verisimilitude to this, would be to take these rank pips that are on the side. 4 of them mean captain. And you could put them right here on the folded edge near the nose if you thought that was something you wanted to add. But as you can see, I kind of look like I'm wearing a small uniform on my face, much like the uniform on my body. If you love the uniform that I'm wearing right now, actually you can get the pattern for this costume from Bad Wolf Costumes, and I'll put a link down in my description so you can see where to get that. Well, that's how you make the Star Trek The Next Generation face mask with a filter pocket as well as 3 layers of fabric made perfectly in your choice of colors to fit the cosplay lover in your family. Until next time when we make a really cool Batwing design mask, stay crafty. I'm Tim Totten. Bye for now. All right, Enterprise, one to beam up.